Here's something I wish I would have known sooner is that your period colors and symptom and flow, they all tell you exactly what's happening in your body. And their symptoms can indicate hormone imbalance. And I know it sounds a little bit gross or even weird, but think about it. If you knew this growing up, if you knew exactly what your period symptoms meant, then you would know exactly how to support them. And think of all the heartache, all the trouble, all the frustration that you would have avoided because you would have been proactive. Well, today we are going to do just that. I'm going to go over each of the different types of period coloring and flow and symptoms associated so you can start to understand exactly what your body is telling you. And I'm going to give you strategies to support the root cause of that disruption. Hi, I'm Tasha Stevens, and I'm an integrative clinical nutritionist and hormone expert. I have supported thousands of women in finally ditching symptoms and reclaiming their health through the power of cycle-synced nutrition and fitness. And I'm excited to support you in better understanding your body so you can get the results that you deserve. So as women, it's pretty standard education that we're told that our periods suck, that they're going to be painful, that they're going to be gross, that there's not much we can do about them. And it's just basically 1 week out of the month where you better suck it up, you better hide, you better run for the high hills if you're a family member, and just get through it. And then in a week, you'll be fine, right? And I remember when I got my first period at the ripe old age of 9 years old, that I was told just that. I was told that by my friends, by my mother, by my sisters. And it was basically just, okay, you know, it sucks, it's painful, you're gonna have debilitating cramps, you might not be able to walk for a day, but you'll get through, and there's really nothing that you can do. Never once was I told or informed that your period, your flow color, your flow rate, the symptoms associated with it, all of that tells a story of what's happening in your body and what's happening hormonally. And never once was I told that you can actually support your hormones and finding hormone balance. You can support your body in reducing those symptoms and getting rid of them entirely if you're just proactive with how you eat and how you move. And oh my God, when I did figure that out, when I finally found that nugget of information, my God, did my life change? Did everything change? And have I been able to support thousands of other women in finally reclaiming their health? Yes. And it's not impossible. You just need to know the strategies. You need to know how to interpret what your body is telling you. So in order to reclaim your health, we need to flip the narrative. You need to break away from that mindset that symptoms are normal. We need to stop normalizing that it's okay to feel like crap or to feel moody or to be bloated. And we need to recognize that those are signs of our, disruption. And those are signs that your body is asking for support, and you are going to be proactive in responding to them. So today I'm going to go over exactly how to do this, how you can start responding, how you can become a master interpreter of your symptoms. And be sure to stay tuned to the end of this video because I'm going to tell you how you can get a free hormone assessment and a completely customized blueprint to start taking control of your health today. So let's get to it. So your period coloring and your flow and flow rate can help to identify 4 commonly known hormone imbalances. Now, it's really important to remember that you can have multiple hormone imbalances at a single time. I know, kind of confusing. So this is why we want to look at your period coloring and your flow rate in conjunction with other symptom patterns and symptoms that you have going on, not just at your cycle, but over the course of your full 28-day cycle. So your period only happens as a result of your body recognizing that a fertilized egg did not implant into the uterine lining, and so that it needs to shed all that excess lining to prepare to try again, right? Your body has no idea whether you're trying to get pregnant or not. And beyond trying to keep you alive, your body's primary goal is to have a baby. That's what it's biologically designed to do. And so when your body recognizes that ovulation happened, but pregnancy didn't, it sheds that uterine lining. Now, if ovulation isn't happening either as a result of hormone imbalance or something like menopause or whatnot, then that results in a different need and a different approach. But I'll get into that later, don't worry. So it's really important to remember and to recognize that periods only happen as a result of ovulation. And so to kickstart ovulation, which is actually what we really should be focusing on rather than your period, your body needs to have rising levels of estrogen to trigger follicle stimulating hormone, and then to kick off ovulation, which would be the release of testosterone and luteinizing hormone. And then after ovulation, your body produces progesterone to help ensure successful conception. Again, if a fertilized egg does not embed, if that process doesn't happen, then your body sheds the excess uterine lining and it tries again in the next month. So when we have imbalances of estrogen or progesterone or cortisol, that impacts your flow rate and your flow coloring, because those impact how thick the endothelial lining gets or how thick your uterine wall becomes in order to prepare for potential conception. And so that's why we can use your flow rate and your flow color to help interpret what happened at a hormonal level. Now, this leads me to my first hormone imbalance, which is estrogen dominance. If your period or your flow is extremely heavy, with or without blood clots, and if it lasts anywhere from 4 days to over 7, and if the coloring's, dark purple or dark red or even almost a black color, this is a sign of too much estrogen. Now, what happens is estrogen's role is to thicken the uterine lining to prepare for ovulation and conception. So its job is to make sure that there is enough endothelial tissue being added to the uterine wall so that if an egg embeds, it has that protective barrier. Now, if you have too much estrogen, whether it's a result of your body producing too much or inactive estrogen is not being properly filtered out of your body, this leads to an overgrowth of endothelial tissue. And oftentimes we see estrogen dominance associated with symptoms or diagnoses such as endometriosis or ovarian cysts because there's an overgrowth of that endothelial tissue. It is extremely common for women to become estrogen dominant as a result of a number of factors. Our diet, our exposure to environmental toxins like plastics or xioestrogens. Hormonal birth control is the single largest cause of that, as well as poor gut function or disrupted liver function, which impacts your body's ability to filter out excess estrogen. And finally, fun fact, your adipose tissues or your fat cells love to store excess estrogen. So if estrogen isn't being kicked out of the body via the gut, if it's free floating around, your tissues will absorb that. And then fat cells make their own excess estrogen. So when they have enough estrogen, it triggers them to make more estrogen. So that cycle can perpetuate itself. Now, the best way to reduce estrogen dominance, if you are struggling with this, is to increase your nutrient diversity and increase your metabolic function. So focus on adding nutrient-dense diets into your regular regimen. You also want to focus on improving your gut health by taking a probiotic, by rebuilding your gut biome and removing inflammatory for you foods. You also need to focus on increasing nutrient diversity, especially vitamin C, B vitamins, to improve liver function, to help filter out excess estrogen. And finally, one of the most overlooked strategies is cycle sync strength training to build more lean mass, because the more lean mass you have, the less adipose tissue and opportunity for estrogen storage. You can also become estrogen dominant as a result of too little progesterone, which brings me to my next hormone imbalance, which is progesterone deficiency. Progesterone deficiency is typically indicative of when you have lighter periods, anywhere from 3 to 5 days, that they're brown or rust in coloring, and that they're fairly, scant. Progesterone is only produced after ovulation, and its role is to tell the uterine lining to remain thick, right? The estrogen thickens the lining. Progesterone says, hey, estrogen, keep working, keep going, keep that uterine lining thick because we're trying to get pregnant. Now, if you're not ovulating or if there's disrupted ovulation or disrupted progesterone production, that can lead to estrogen to progesterone imbalance, which exacerbates estrogen dominance. You can have an entire progesterone deficiency, and it's also linked to infertility or unexplained infertility. Progesterone production is number one compromised by hormonal birth control. Birth control stops your body's ability to get pregnant by stopping ovulation or impeding ovulation. So typically if you're on any type of hormonal birth control, unless it's a mini pill, you're not ovulating. So your body's not producing progesterone. It's also easily compromised by chronic stress, disrupted ovulation, nutrient deficiencies, and poor lymphatic function. Now, the best way to improve natural progesterone production is, one, to get off hormonal birth control if you are on it and you're trying to ovulate. Two, you want to focus on increasing key nutrients that help to produce progesterone in your body, which is vitamin E, zinc, magnesium, and vitamin D. You also want to improve metabolic function, which reduces chronic stress in your system, which means moving through a strategic reverse diet to eat more foods and incorporate more nutrients to reduce chronic stress and burden. And then finally, you want to improve lymphatic function. A lot of times we'll have enough progesterone production, but progesterone is carried through the body and to its receptors via the lymphatic system. If your lymphatic system is clogged, it can lead to poor progesterone transport. One of the best ways to improve lymphatic function is to incorporate more mindful movement and gentle movement to avoid chronic stress in your system. Now, that third common hormone imbalance is low estrogen. And if you have a flow that is very light, like 1 to 3 days max, barely using any pads, if you're spotting, and if the coloring is very faint pink or faint light red, this is a sign of low estrogen. Now remember, estrogen's role is to thicken that uterine lining. So if you don't have enough estrogen, that uterine lining doesn't get thick enough to need to shed excess estrogen or excess tissue. We often see low estrogen in women who are going through menopause or in perimenopause or postmenopause because of your shift in ovarian function. But if we see these symptoms early as even in your 40s, typically it's not related to menopause, but it's related to chronic stress. Now, the best way to improve estrogen levels is to get to the root cause of its disruption in the first place. So if you have low estrogen as a result of chronic stress, we need to understand what is causing stress in your body and respond. Is it under eating, whether it's intentional or unintentional? Is it overtraining, not moving enough? Is it poor sleep and recovery, right? We address those root causes and focus on improving adrenal function. Now, if you have low estrogen as a result of you are going through menopause or you've been through menopause, then you want to support ramping up the estrogen production systems that are still viable and active in your body. And you can do this by incorporating more nutrients, especially phytoestrogens, which are naturally occurring food compounds that mimic estrogen in the body. And that's flax seeds, soybeans, edamame, tofu, and strawberries. Finally, you want to focus on improving blood sugar balance and eating at regular intervals to help reduce chronic stress and to regulate natural estrogen production systems. Now, this brings me to our final hormone imbalance, which is high cortisol. If you are missing your cycle entirely, and it's not because of menopause, if you have cycle irregularity, if you have really short cycles, like less than 26 days, or really long cycles, greater than 40 days, this is a sign of disrupted cortisol and high stress in your body. And what happens is even if you are showing signs of multiple hormone imbalances, typically it's a result of cortisol's action on your body. Cortisol is produced by your adrenals glands, which is a part of the HPA axis. Your adrenals produce cortisol, and then your pituitary gland tells your body how much cortisol to release in response. If the pituitary gland is overburdened and the adrenals are overburdened by producing a ton of cortisol, this disrupts estrogen production, which then disrupts ovulation and progesterone production. And so if we see multiple symptoms across each, or if we see a lot of cycle irregularity, we want to get to the root cause of your cortisol disruption. And it's its own category because your body produces cortisol to be able to respond to the stressor. And so it temporarily diverts metabolic function and energy function in order to respond. And so in order to get any results, we need to reduce the stress. We need to turn the alarm system off so that your body can resume regular hormone production. So when we have chronically elevated cortisol, it leads to blood sugar disruptions, it leads to impacted hormone production, and it leads to impacted insulin reactivity, all of which slow metabolic function. So if you're struggling with high cortisol or chronically elevated cortisol symptoms, then your first step is to focus on rebuilding metabolic function and increasing your total nutrient consumption, i.e. going through a reverse diet, to help address that increased metabolic demand and to reduce the response in your body. We also want to remove all high intensity workouts because your body will not accept them and they'll only add more stress to the system. And then finally, focus on creating a bedtime routine, turning blue light off an hour before bed, creating a routine that allows you to unwind so that you can get quality recovery to reduce adrenal overload and fatigue. So I bet at this point you were like taking mental stock of all of the different symptoms, and you're trying to, connect your symptoms to your associated hormone imbalance. And so I invite you to take my free hormone assessment, and it's designed to help you do just that. It's a quick 5-minute quiz that's going to help look at all of your symptoms in conjunction and identify your top priority hormone imbalances. And you'll get a customized blueprint to start taking action today. And if you found this video helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and even share with a friend.